There's literally thousands of inputs going on in this moment in your body, right? Every finger is sensing something. Every part of your skin is sensing something. Your heart is beating, your breath is coming in and out of your body. There's sounds around you, there's smells, there's tastes. All this is happening all the time at any moment. So you literally have thousands of inputs at any moment, and yet somehow we choose to focus on our thoughts. And that becomes the only thing that's important to us. And yet, if you really think about it, the only thing that is not happening in this moment is your thoughts. Your thoughts is never about right now. Your thought is always about the future, the past, some other time, something you did, something you regret, something you want to do. Whereas all these other 1,000 inputs are actually happening right now. Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Hey, Ruben. Great to see you, man. Great to
Yeah,
see you
good.
again.
Last time we talked, you chatted with me about meditation, and I heard that quite a few of the people on your channel were interested in learning more about meditation. And I've got quite a few people on my channel who asked a lot about meditation. So I figured I'd give kind of an introduction, what to do, what not to do maybe, and what to pay attention to for people who really want to kind of go down this path and explore it, and see what it's like. I'll just start with something very, very simple that I think is really important, and it's something that the Buddha said, or at least allegedly said, and I think it's really important. He said, "Don't believe anything. Don't believe anybody who tells you anything is your enemy, because they're trying to convince you of their own beliefs." So what he said is, come practice with me for 3 months, try it out for yourself, see what happens when you do practice out, and judge for
Mm.
yourself whether it's good for you or not, whether it works for you. And I love that. That to me was, it felt very free. It felt like, oh, okay, I can try it for myself. It's like an experiment. And I think that's really what I would urge everybody who's watching this to see it as an experiment on yourself and see how it works for you and what it does, and pay attention. And that really was very helpful to me in my journey, not saying, oh, it has to be this way, or I believe this and therefore, but oh
Mm.
wow, this feels good or this doesn't feel good, and paying attention to that.
Yeah, it
So
seems like something that you have to practice, right? Even the super experienced pro meditators call it a practice and say that they have to practice. And
yes.
I when I was in the Air Force, when I was just leaving the Air Force a few years before I left, I think back in 2018, they were actually teaching us about mindfulness.
Yeah.
What they were finding is that there was actual benefits. There was benefits to fighter pilots, right? I was a fighter pilot for 18 years, and there's benefits when you get overtasked. And I actually used it when I was flying. I tried it and it did work, but I need to practice. I don't practice enough. And so I know you are very experienced in this. So I'm very happy to have your time and to just
Yeah.
run through an actual practice. I'd love to just see it.
Yeah, I'm going to start out with just an introduction, kind of explaining it a bit, and then we'll do a
Perfect.
little practice. What I wanted to say about fighter pilots, yes, absolutely. Military, a lot of the services, firefighters are practicing mindfulness. These people who have a lot of demand on their cognitive functions, on their ability to be regulated and function in a good way. And I have a 12-year-old son, and I've actually taught him how to meditate, and he uses it while he plays Fortnite. So he actually ends up being a better
Yeah.
Fortnite player because he's able to regulate his breath, and he's able to bring himself back to a regulated state rather than getting too bent out of shape because of his losing or his winning or whatever's happening. So it really is helpful for everybody if, again, you practice. And the practice is what allows this really incredible technology, this human technology of meditation, to really impact and change our lives. So, what I want to start with is kind of explain what meditation is and what it isn't. And I think this is really important because so often people have all these notions that come from, religious or spiritual beliefs or other things they've heard. And meditation is, we can look at our awareness, and this is kind of this part of us that notices what is going on in this moment. And most of the time, this awareness is kind of focused on our thoughts. We have this voice in the back of our head, whether it's narrating our lives or telling us what we should do or shouldn't do, or judging us or beating ourselves up, or if we're planning what we're going to do tomorrow or what we're going to do in a few minutes or the next thing. This is kind of the voice in our head, right? And most of the time, most of our awareness is focused on this voice. And it kind of commands most of our attention. And a lot of us, and I did too, often confuse who we are with this voice. And we start thinking we're actually this voice. And meditation is really the practice of taking this camera and turning it away from this voice towards something else. And there's many other things going on at any moment, right? I mean, right now there's sounds going on in the room. There's my sound of my voice, not just the sound of your voice. There's the feelings you have in your body. There's thoughts, there's sensations. There's the feeling of the temperature on your skin. I mean, there's literally thousands of inputs coming to your body right now as we sit here that are not your thoughts, right? But our minds has chosen to really focus on our thoughts when it's really only one of thousands of other inputs. And the way we kind of pry this camera away from our thoughts is by focusing on something else. The breath tends to be a good one because it's always with us. And we'll get more into that in a minute about why it actually ends up being such a good anchor point for most people. And so we'll talk about that a bit too. Now, the posture, and a lot of people spend a lot of time talking about posture with meditation, is mainly to support the practice, because we're trying to achieve a state that is kind of relaxed. We kind of allow the whole body to relax, the muscles to relax, yet we're alert. And that relaxed and alert is quite an unusual situation for us, right? Because if we're alert, we're usually running around or doing something or active. And Andrew Huberman actually said this in his recent podcast, that neuroplasticity is at its maximum when we're in this relaxed and alert state. And so we're actually primed for opening our minds and learning. And this is really true. I find it to be true for myself. And this is why we're in a relaxed and alert state. And the third thing that's really important is stillness. Because if you imagine that you're looking down at a clear pond of water and you're trying to see the bottom, if there's a kid that keeps on throwing stones into the pond, you're not going to be able to see the bottom, right? The surface will constantly be disrupted. And so it's kind of like that. If we keep on moving and fidgeting and moving around as we're trying to meditate, every time we move, we're going to create waves that then become a primary focus for our attention rather than the more subtle things underneath that surface. So we really try and make an intention, a set of commitment to being as relaxed as we can, alert and still. There's 4 traditional postures that are helpful. One is sitting, standing, laying down, and walking. And today we're going to mainly just sit. I think if anybody is uncomfortable sitting, you can try and stand. That might help. Laying down is also good. With laying down, there is the risk of falling asleep, which is okay. If you tend to be someone who falls asleep easily, then sitting might be better in order to maintain a state of alertness. The general posture is kind of sitting comfortably, relaxing your shoulders, let them go back, and having an imaginary string kind of pulling your head up, straight up, so you can align your spine. And if you're sitting in a chair, a lot of times coming to the very front of the chair and sitting on the front of your chair will be a bit more supportive of that, because you'll be able to align your back better and your feet can be flat on the floor.
Yeah, it's easier.
So yeah, that'll help. Now, please don't try and stop your thoughts. This is something a lot of people think they need to stop their thoughts. You can't stop your thoughts. You're going to get a bad headache if you try. So just really kind of notice your thoughts, observe them if you can, and you probably will get carried away with your thoughts, but that's absolutely natural. And the practice of meditation is the practice of coming back from our thoughts to other things that are happening in this present moment, which is going to be our breath for this practice. So we're going to focus on our breath. Now, when we notice that we're off in thought, a lot of times we won't even notice. We'll be sitting here meditating, and then our mind will be thinking about tomorrow and what we need to be doing. And then we'll be like, oh, wait, shoot, I'm supposed to be meditating right now. What am I doing? And you'll catch yourself. The first thing you're probably going to do is judge yourself, right? You're going to be like, I'm such a dumbass. I can't believe I just, and so the definition of mindfulness is non-judgmental awareness. And that awareness, that camera, you can observe what is happening, including the fact that you got lost in thoughts, without judging yourself. And you can actually observe the fact that you just judged yourself. So you don't actually have to put more fuel on the fire. You can just kind of notice what's going on and let it go. So we're gonna do a little practice here of noticing and paying attention. And again, meditation is the practice of developing these skills and these helpful qualities of mind that allow us to be more present. And there's a scientific name for this presence, which is called metacognition. Metacognition, it's not cognition, it's not our thoughts or our emotions or our feelings. It's the noticing of the fact that we have thoughts, emotions, and feelings. So and again, it takes practice. At first, it's really challenging, but within a month or two, most people start really noticing a big shift in their ability to notice this gap, this space between the stimulus and response. So when a stimulus comes in, we hear a sound, and immediately our mind makes up, oh, that's a bird. But there's a gap between noticing that it's a sound of a bird and making the thought it's a bird. And in that gap, if we can widen that gap, that gives us more time to notice rather than reacting. We can respond in a more aware, skillful way. So that's very helpful. So
Is there a minimum time, that you recommend that people should start practicing?
yeah, definitely. I would say, first of all, start practicing. I would say, 2 minutes to 5 minutes
Okay.
is helpful. Consistency is going to be a lot more important than how long you practice for. So practicing for 5 minutes
Yep.
every day is going to be a lot more helpful than 1 hour once a week. Practicing first
Okay.
thing in the morning tends to be really helpful. And I know a lot of you are
Mm,
parents, a lot of you have other things going on. I wake up half an hour before my kids do in order to get my half-hour practice before they wake up. That allows me to also be calm and receptive and open to when they wake up, to be more supportive of
mm,
what they need. Um, the reason it actually is helpful to meditate first thing in the morning when you wake up is because your mind hasn't really started going too fast yet. You haven't really started all the worry and all the concern. So I like to meditate before I say a word to anyone. I'll get out of bed,
mm.
I'll roll out of bed, just find my corner. I have a corner that's dedicated to my meditation practice. I have my pillow set up there, and I just go there and I set a timer and go sit. And that's super helpful because it sets a place that is dedicated to that. And that's one thing I would also recommend is making a spot that is your spot for meditating and where you go to.
And it doesn't matter if I cross my hands. I realize that I often cross my arms or my hands when I'm meditating, and I know when you're getting like your blood pressure, you shouldn't cross any of your limbs. Does this matter? You think?
I would say that again, whatever works for you is best.
Okay, cool.
There is again, like everything else, look at this as an experiment
Yeah.
that you're going to play around with different things. For years, I'd meditate with my hands faced upright on my knees, and then I decided I'm going to place them face down on my knees, and now I put them kind of hand in hand like this on my lap. I
Okay.
went through a lot of different things. I used to meditate with my eyes open. I still do sometimes. You could set a little dot on the wall and just look at that. There's thousands of
Mm.
practices for meditation, and
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 walking meditation, I actually just kind of tried this the other day. We were on a hike with my kids, and I was
mm,
like, I heard you can walk and meditate, and I tried it, and it worked. It was really interesting. It was cool.
yeah, it's profound actually. Walking
Yeah.
meditation is one of the least favorite for most people, but actually is probably one of the most profound and helpful because most of the day we're walking around, most of the day we're moving
Mm,
around, we're doing something. And so the ability to take the meditation practice off the cushion into our real lives is very, very important and substantial. So the practice of walking meditation,
mm,
again, it's about walking slow enough where you can be aware of the sensations of your feet touching the ground, of the sensations in your body, noticing the breath, noticing the sounds around you, but also fast enough where you're not falling over or losing balance,
mm,
so you have this kind of, and again, practicing and playing with it and
yeah.
seeing what works for you is really helpful.
That was more like what I did when I was flying in the mission. When I tried it, it's just a few seconds. When I actually used it when I was in a fighter mission, I do remember I was overtasked. It's one of those points in a mission. I really enjoyed it where there's too many inputs. I just have too many inputs for where to look. And I know I only had a few seconds. I had maybe 10 or 15 seconds to really make the proper decision. Was I going to continue the attack or was I going to run away? Essentially, right? And
Yeah,
this is a really critical decision you have to make when you're in a big fight like that. How much information do they have? How much information do I have? And it's a key point here. And that's when I tried it. After they were talking about that mindfulness, just for a few seconds, and it kind of it cleared, and I was able to kind of push away all those other inputs, all the overtaskings, and just kind
right.
of focus on what I wanted to there, and
Yeah.
be like, okay, this is a better decision.
Well, that's
So
that's beautiful. That's a very astute observation and a great point that you make, and I think it goes to show kind of the difference between attention and awareness. When we're focusing and our attention is narrow, we're able to notice something specific in great detail that's happening right now, and that's a mental task. And awareness is actually a relaxed state of allowing everything to come to us. And we have a lot more capacity as awareness than we have as attention. So if we're paying attention to something very specific, it's a very large cognitive load. Whereas when we relax and just notice everything that's happening in this moment, our cognitive load goes down and our minds are actually able to process a lot more quickly. So it's
Mm.
kind of that delay time and that capacity is huge. Yeah, that's very
Mm.
astute.
Excellent.
Great.
Well, I'm ready, man. Can we
Yeah, let's do it.
let's
So
go. I'm ready.
we're gonna start here by just kind of finding that comfortable position that we talked about,
Okay.
where you can kind of relax and feel your body here arriving in this moment as we kind of take a deep breath, feel our hands. We're gonna start noticing, just allowing ourselves to arrive, allowing and even welcoming ourselves, welcoming to this moment, to this place, to our seat. And we're going to start by paying attention to our breath. And what we're going to do is actually take a few deliberate breaths here. So we're going to breathe in for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then breathe out for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in again. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out. 2, 3, 4. And one more time. In. 2, 3, 4. And out. 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to extend to 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. And 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we're going to let go of that and allow our breath to come back to its natural breath. Just letting it go, allowing it to keep on going, but still noticing the chest rising, the air coming in, and allowing the hands to relax further, allowing the shoulders to relax back and down. Noticing the sounds in our environment, the sound of my voice, and the breath. The breath is still breathing in and breathing out. We can notice the weight of our body as we sit here on the chair, the contact of our body with the chair, the contact of our hands with each other, with our laps, and the breath is coming in and going out. And you can see that we're in open awareness now. We're noticing the sounds, we're noticing the sensations, we're noticing our breath. All of this can be noticed all at once as we relax more, allow our shoulders to re-relax, our hands, feeling into our hands, feeling into the thumbs, the fingers, and allowing a small smile to come to our faces as we breathe in and breathe out. And naturally, your mind will get caught up in a thought. The mind is doing what it does. Just like your salivary glands create saliva, your mind creates thoughts. As we notice that, we can thank our mind for doing what it does so well and come back, relaxing our shoulders again, relaxing our hands, and once again noticing our breath. Noticing the weight of our body as we sit here, contacting the surface, the floor, allowing, allowing ourselves the space and the time to sit still, to relax, to be alert. Noticing, is there a difference between how our right hand feels and our left hand feels? How does my left thumb feel? How does my right thumb feel? Moving up into the shoulders, allowing them to relax further, noticing how my shoulders feel. Not trying to loosen too much, not trying to interact with them too much, just allowing the shoulders to be the way they are, welcoming, really opening to the way things are. Noticing where the breath is felt in the body, perhaps in the belly, perhaps in the chest, perhaps even in the nostrils as the air comes in and out, the sensations of breathing. And once again, we'll notice that the thoughts may have captured our attention. And once again, we can bring a smile, noticing, realizing that we are in thought. That moment of realizing is what meditation is. It's the practice of noticing when we're trapped in thought and then coming back to this moment, coming back to our breath, coming back to our sensations, our feelings that are happening right now, right here. Noticing again, can I re-relax my hands? Can I re-relax my shoulders? Noticing all the sounds, the nearby sounds, the faraway sounds. There's no doing and hearing. Simply by being, hearing is done. Sounds are received, the sound of my voice, the sound of your environment, all received within awareness. Your thoughts are received in awareness. Your emotions, sensations, feelings, all received within awareness. At this point, perhaps placing a hand over your heart and feeling the warmth of the skin, the contact of your hand over your chest. And taking a moment to thank yourself for taking these minutes to be curious, to explore this practice, to give yourself the gift of curiosity and attention, and allowing your eyes to open, noticing again, orienting where you are in the room, stretching or moving around if you need to, and paying attention to how you feel now versus how you felt before we started.
Oh, that was crazy. Because I forgot I was on being recorded.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
it's so interesting, right? You can just like shut out the entire world where it's this crazy commotion, emotions, action, change, everything, and then you just sit there and just don't move. And
Yeah,
there's just like a stillness or something that you can tap into.
yeah. And tap into is exactly right. I think that's
Mm.
a beautiful way of saying it because the stillness is always there underneath the noise. And it's always available to us in every moment if we are willing to stop long enough to let the water settle, to actually go to that deeper place that actually is a huge resource that's always available to us. What we learn as we meditate more is that there is no need for the effort in meditation. We
Mm,
often try and make an effort, and the effort comes from our natural way of being and how we usually do things in our lives, right? With effort. And in meditation, it is the practice of actually learning how to not effort, to
not effort.
surrender, to relax into, to allow this natural silence and peace, this natural state of meditation that actually exists under all the
Mm.
noise to actually arise and come up and be a part of our lives. So,
Well, that's a great point. Yeah. The stillness, yeah, it's there, I guess. It's always there, like you're saying. It's always there. Can you tap into it before you freak out? But before the next time I throw something, I hopefully I'm not throwing a lot of stuff at my kids, but the next time you freak out, everyone does, right? We all have
yeah,
emotional outbreaks. The best tennis
absolutely.
player in the world, right? Novak Djokovic says that he uses mindfulness, um, and he freaks out all the time on the tennis court. So it's always there. That's interesting. That's a great point.
Yeah, yeah, and I do too. I mean, what I've learned over I've been practicing meditation, pretty consistently, hour and a half a day for the last 15 years,
Oh,
and it's completely changed my life in many profound ways. But yes, I still
mm,
have those moments where, my kids are irritating or I find that I can't handle the burden of what's going on in my life. I'm too triggered. And I start reverting back to that place. And what happens as we practice more mindfulness and more meditation, our capacity to come back to our senses.
mm.
Again, when we say come back to our senses, we're
Practice.
literally coming back to the sensations, the senses of our body, coming back to our breath, coming back to our
Mm,
senses and leaving our thoughts. Our thoughts are crazy making, and our senses are balancing, they're grounding. So when we come back to our senses, the quicker we come back to our senses, the shorter the period of time that we're going to be out of our mind and in a state of disrepair and disruption. When we're functioning from that place, we're going to make bad decisions, we're make bad
yes.
choices, we're going to do silly things that we regret. And so we all do it. A couple days ago I yelled at my son, and I think what changes over the years is how quickly I recognize that I'm in a state of dysregulation, how fast I'm able to come back to regulation, and how quickly I'm able to repair that relationship with him.
Mm,
And that is huge because instead of, holding on to a grudge for 2, 3 days, it takes me literally minutes now to notice, to recognize, come back to a calm state and apologize. And I think we're always going to be, in a vulnerable to that state. And what changes is really our capacity to deal with those dysregulated states.
You said you practice for an hour and a half a day. That's amazing. I'm happy if I can do 10 minutes. I've been able to go to 20 minutes now. Um, but even just this few minutes that we just did, I don't know, I feel more stable, I guess, if you think about it. Like we're really trillions of cells, trillions of little organisms we don't really understand, all biological, this really complex biological system. And it just feels like whenever I can make the effort, I guess, like you said there, to actually do the practice, no matter
Yes.
how long it is, even if it's just 5 minutes, afterwards, I feel like there's less vibration going on in my body. Like there's more, it's more stable in
Yeah.
general. Like you're saying, we're touching into something, a stillness there. That's really what I seem to feel the benefit for. I feel it right now, and I thanks again, Ruben, for taking the time to
Yeah.
educate all of
Yeah.
us on it.
Yeah, and I think what you're referring to is a state of alignment. You're kind of more
Mm,
aligned. All your parts, everything's more cooperative. Everything's playing along together better, rather than having this extreme internal battle between what you want, don't want, and struggle. And we're constantly in that state. And the more we're able to kind of come back to a regulated state, to a calmer state, I think we're able to function more effectively. One of my favorite quotes, my favorite all-time quotes, is like by a psychologist called Viktor Frankl. He wrote a beautiful book called Man's Search for Meaning. I'd highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for more meaning in their lives, or just really wants a beautiful book. But he said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
okay, excellent. It reminds me of you mentioned the Buddha. He said that you can look in between every moment. Basically, every moment lasts for an infinity. I
Yep.
remember this thought you told me previously, and so if you can actually slow everything down enough, you can get to where you reach infinity. Is that how do you explain that thought?
Well, I think there's different ways of looking at it, but I think one of our cognitive distortions is what's called black and white thinking, right? We all do it. We all say it's always like this or it's never like this, and
Hmm.
very rarely in life are things black and white. We tend to simplify them to black and white in order to make our decision making and our certainty greater, right? So if we're able to say something is black or white, then it's easier to make a decision. It's like, yes, it's good or it's bad. And I think, as we meditate more, we become more aware of the subtle, right? So right now, when we were sitting, we actually noticed the breath. We started noticing that there's actually three different states of breathing, right? There's a state of breathing where you're just breathing. Like most of the time now we're talking, we're not actually aware of our breath. We're talking, but our breath is kind of doing itself. It's taking care of us. And, it's amazing. It just does it. There's a state where we're actively controlling our breath. Like we started the meditation, we can count to 5 or up 5, down 5, and we're actually controlling our breath and noticing it at the same time. And then there's a third state, which is not controlling our breath, but noticing it. And that is a very subtle state where it's really a hard state to be in, because the sensation of the breath is quite subtle compared to the noise that our mind is making, and the struggles that we all have in our daily lives, and the commotion, and it's hard. So the more we're able to become more and more aware of the subtlety of what is actually happening in this moment, we start noticing that we can notice not only that we are breathing, but actually the fact that the breath is going up and pausing at the top and then going down. And we can start
Mm,
noticing the more and more detail in every breath and in every moment. There's
mm,
literally thousands of inputs going on in this moment in your body, right? Every finger is sensing something. Every part of your skin is sensing something. Your heart is beating. Your breath is coming in and out of your body. There's sounds around you. There's smells. There's tastes. All this is happening all the time at any moment. So you literally have thousands of inputs at any moment. And yet somehow we choose to focus on our thoughts. And that becomes the only thing that's important to us. And yet, if you really think about it, the only thing that is not happening in this moment is your thoughts. your thoughts is never about right now. Your thought is always about the future, the past, some other time, something you did, something you regret, something you want to do. Whereas all these other 1,000 inputs are actually happening right now. So
Mm,
we have this massive anchor in our body that allows us to come back to this moment
mm,
and to be more and more present. And as we practice that coming back from thought to this moment, we get better at it, like anything else we practice, right? So, and that's why, I practice an hour and a half every day. I'm not religious about it. I used to be more religious about practicing every day. I some days I'll practice, for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes if I'm very busy. There might even be days, I've allowed myself to actually not practice on certain days. It's rare,
mm,
but I do have it happen once in a while. If I'm flying somewhere or something like that, it can happen. But even then, at this point, I practice most of the time throughout the day too. It doesn't have to be a formal
mm,
practice. I'll be standing there doing dishes and I'll pay attention to my breath. I'll lay in bed when I wake up and I'll notice my body and the sensations in my fingers and my hands. And as that pervades your life more and more, there's a certain peace that grows and a certain serene calmness that kind of pervades life and becomes a really warm, comforting way to live life. And it's really very beneficial. I found it to be super beneficial for myself, and most of the people that I teach and learn are also experience this depth. I've never met someone who could not meditate or could not learn how to meditate. All it takes is dedication and practice and a sincere will. If you want to do it,
mm,
you'll do it, and if it's important to you and you recognize that benefit. And that's why I really try and give people the experience,
mm.
because once they have the experience, they have that taste of that sweet kind of calm, that peacefulness. Then there's a craving for that. There's like, ooh, that
Mhm.
felt
Yes,
really good. I want more of that. So
exactly. For me, it was, I think originally I tried 20 minutes a day and I wasn't able really, it was a little too much. And then I started 10 minutes each morning, right when I wake up, last year. And I was able to stick through that. And now, yeah, I've made a great benefit. Like you mentioned there, I really just feel I have a tool now, a tool. It's free. Anybody can do it. You could be old and young and be able to do this. It's free. You always have it with you where you can use this skill, this technology, like you said, to quiet your mind. And for me, it's just kind of reach that stillness. And it didn't happen this time, but I'll go into an area where it's like I'm in a black room.
yeah,
There's no real walls to the room. I feel like it's enclosed, but I can't see any walls or anything. I'm kind of in this black space, and I really enjoy that actually. Yeah, it just goes back to what is the true nature of reality, and it's probably not your bills and all the little worries that you have. And since I've been meditating, yeah, I've been able to release that. Maybe I had anger in the past towards people, people I, I totally hated at the time. And, but I don't, I think I've been able to release hate, noticing that your thoughts are not you, right? Your thoughts are what this crazy biological system created and
yeah,
threw towards you, but that's not really what you are, right?
yeah.
And you can make decisions to not hold those grudges, because I don't think that people really had the evil in their hearts. I think it's they're going through the same issues we are. So I don't thank you, Riven, for helping me
Yeah,
out this past
absolutely,
year
Chris.
and for doing this.
I'm very happy to do it. I love what I do, and I love sharing this because it's changed my life, and I've seen how it's changed so many people's lives around me that, I feel like I would recommend everybody to give it a shot and try and not give up. If you really want more peace of mind and more uh, open-hearted love in your life and just acceptance, like you said, acceptance of your own feelings, your own thoughts, and we can go into this some other time as well. I'm happy to do more of these, with you to get
Great.
deeper into this. I think it'll be helpful as well for a lot of the people. But I think the other wing, so we have two wings of meditation generally, are mindfulness and compassion. And so it comes together. It's important to notice, but it's also important not to judge. So it's
Yeah.
and without both, we tend to, if we just notice and judge, it can be kind of painful, and it can be, we can become quite abusive towards ourselves and to other people. So
Yeah.
it's really important to notice and then actually come out with a heart practice which allows that to embrace what is noticed with love.
Yeah, you said not judged, and hear that a lot when you talk about the voice that is you, and usually the voice is saying I messed up, or oh you screwed this up, or you forgot that, you messed this up. It's usually it's got a whip, The normal voice has a whip here, and it's
Yeah,
awesome to train it to be like, oh, I was thinking about something else. It's okay. That's just what happens. It's a mistake. Now
sure.
come back, don't get mad about it, because if you get mad about it, if you keep getting mad at yourself every time you think of something else, you're never going to actually meditate, because
Right,
all you're going
you're
to
actually
do,
training
all you do,
you're
yes,
training yourself to be abusive, right? So I think it's
yeah,
exactly that, right? And I think this is the
yeah,
hardest part initially is people
untraining.
they get frustrated. They get frustrated
Mhm.
because, "Oh, I'm supposed to be better at this," or "Why can't I stop my thoughts?" or "Why am I still
You
thinking?"
can't
and "Why
stop
am
your
I keep"
thoughts.
and you know what? I get caught in my thoughts all the time, and it's just naturally how we are. We have minds, and these minds, that's what they do. They think, they produce thoughts. That's their primary job. Our prefrontal cortex, that's what it does. It's thinking, it's a thinking machine, it's a problem-solving machine, and it's incredibly good at it. Yet it's not only who we are, it's a part of us. And there's so much more to who we are. And if we're able to tap into those other parts and allow that prefrontal cortex to do its thing, to thank it.
Mm.
I mean, a lot of times when I get myself caught in thought lately, I've been thankful. I've been like, oh, thank you. Thank you for producing thoughts. Thank you for being such a loyal servant and working so hard to solve so many problems in my life. Thank you. I see you. I'm going to go back to my breath now. And it's important to be quite disciplined about going back to your breath, because if you've dedicated time to meditate and you've decided to sit for
Mm.
5 or 10 minutes and you notice that you're thinking, it's good to make a commitment to not sink into those thoughts. And a lot of times people will be thinking about meditation and then they'll be like, oh, but if I'm thinking about meditation, isn't that okay? Well, if you're trying to practice meditation, then you need to come back to your breath. If you want to practice thinking, then you can think about whatever you want, and it can be
Mm.
about thoughts, about meditation, and so I
Mm.
again, it doesn't really matter what the content of the thought is. It's the act of thinking that we're trying to come back from.
See,
So
observing the thought, realizing it happened, not putting any blame on it, right? And then
yeah.
going back to, I don't know, concentrating on your happy place, I don't, whatever you would call
Going
that.
back to your breath, I
To
mean,
the breath.
again,
Yeah.
the breath is a fantastic anchor. There are certain people, and we'll talk about this more in a future show as well, as trauma. Some people have experienced, childhood trauma or certain traumas that have made the breath quite a challenging place to anchor in,
Mm.
because when they actually try and anchor in the breath, it brings up fears. If someone went through a drowning experience, or maybe they had some kind of abuse in their childhood, the breath can sometimes be a challenging place, because when they experience their breath, it reminds them of their trauma. Like a lot of
Mm.
people, I've a few days ago was actually giving a session to someone who was a war veteran, and he's got pretty severe PTSD.
Mm.
And with him, his breath is not available as an anchor. When he goes to his breath, he immediately goes back to the battle scene, and he's in that place, and he starts breathing deeply, and it's not helpful. So for him, we go towards sounds, and he's able to be receptive to sound. So we focus the meditation around that. And there's many different anchors, and we can go over all those. A lot of
Mm.
learning how to meditate is actually going through lots of these different anchors and finding the one that works for you. Breath might work for you, it might not. There's many other anchors, and at different times,
Mm.
different anchors can work too. There's something called a body scan, where you literally scan your body each, kind of when we were talking, right? We talked about how are your
Yeah.
hands feeling, how are your shoulders feeling, and
Mm.
our awareness is so sensitive. It can notice how your little pinky on your left hand is feeling, and it can pay
Yeah, it's
attention to
amazing.
that, and it's
You can, like,
amazing.
zoom in, yeah, on one little
Yeah,
skin cell or something.
right. It's incredible. So yeah, that's wonderful, Chris. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm so glad that we were able to have this time. And it's
Excellent. No, good luck on your YouTube channel, and
thank
yeah,
you.
for sure you have so much to add.
I really appreciate that, Chris. Thank you.